Guys, I need one favor. Please rate and review this podcast on Apple. If you are listening to it on Apple, we'd be number one, but we don't have enough reviews. We got the downloads, not the reviews. It's bureaucracy. Help us. Every episode of The Gauge is brought to you by Bill Fick Ford and the WCRA. Who wants to be Rodeo's next millionaire? It's time. That time again through the WCRA. You can win $1 million by nominating your rides or runs and earning points through the WCRA. Through the Triple Crown of Rodeo, the WCRA will award $1 million in cash prizes to any one athlete or collection of athletes who wins first place in any 3 consecutive WCRA major rodeos. $1 million is completely up for grabs. The Days of 47 Cowboy Games and Rodeo will be the second stop of the 2021 Triple Crown of Rodeo series. The event will pay out over $560,000 and will be held July 20th through the 24th in Salt Lake City. Get this, there will be 0 entry fees, people. You heard me correctly. No entry fees. The only way to qualify for the Triple Crown of Rodeo event is by nominating your rides and runs with the WCRA. Use promo code GAUGE10 for 10% off your next nomination. Again, that promo code is GAUGE10 for 10% off your next nomination. To learn more, just visit WCRArodeo.com and learn how you can earn a spot at the Days of 47 Rodeo and possibly be Rodeo's next millionaire. What? Guys, Bill Fick Ford is the #1 Super Duty dealer in the country for the 4th year in a row. You guys have heard me rant and rave about Bill Fick Ford for the absolute best buying experience in the car industry, truck industry. Bill Fick Ford's the place to go. I bet you remember the old ad where I said I was getting a new Super Duty. Well, here's the keys for that. Bill Fick Ford delivers, guys. No bull discounts, no bull interest rates, the best buying experience you can get. And if you are not local to Huntsville or the Houston area, he'll deliver it to you just like he did to me. Bill Fick Ford.
It doesn't matter if it's your cowboy hat or your equipment. Your cowboy hat is part of your equipment. So when you show up feeling good, looking good, you're going to perform well.
I never see us letting our foot off the gas because we're all gas, no brakes, and we work hard and we play even harder, and we want as many gold buckles as we can possibly get.
We really live it and put everything we have into everything that we do here, whether it's working hard, riding bareback horses, playing on the boat. It's full send.
What's underneath that hat and what's in your heart as a cowboy is what really matters.
This is The Gauge with host Chance Conradu.
Are you freaking serious? It's Conrado. This is The Gauge, and I am Chance Conrado, as promised, part 2 with State Senator Paul Bailey, or we'll call him Vice President Paul Bailey, Vice President of the NRCHA. That is, check it out.
But here's something I want to go back and talk about as far as being a legislator. And so there's 33 Tennessee state senators, and we all come from very diverse backgrounds, and we all come from various parts of Tennessee. Now, what you will find is that those of us that are rural senators, rural politicians, we have different thoughts, we have different values than even Republicans that come from, let's say, a Memphis,
Sure,
which is the largest city in the state of Tennessee, Nashville, Knoxville, Chattanooga. So you take those urban, suburban, metro senators, yes, they may be a Republican, but they are several generations removed from the family farm, from the ranch. And so many times those legislators will come to me and they'll say, hey, I'm on the ag committee because it's agriculture and environment committee. Those two intersect on that one committee. And so maybe you're from Memphis and you're on the ag and environment committee because of environmental issues. And those senators come to you and they'll say, hey, there's this legislation coming through involving, horse slaughter. And, of course, that's been an issue we've not heard much about recently, but I'm just using that as an example.
I mean, it's popped up over the decades multiple times.
It has.
In most equine states for sure.
So they'll come and they'll ask someone like myself that's involved in the in the horse industry that's involved with raising cattle and that farms, what will that do to farming in the state of Tennessee? What would that do to the equine industry in the state of Tennessee if we pass that legislation? So, you try to have those relationships with those other senators that don't always understand. And that's where I go back to California. You've got that conservative, and I don't mean to necessarily just keep going. I could probably even say it about Texas.
Sure.
But you have so many legislators now coming from those big cities that they are far and removed from the family ranch, from the family farm, that they don't understand when they pass legislation how it's going to affect those people that are feeding America.
And how do you get them to understand that? I mean, when you're meeting with them, is there enough time to have this discussion where you can explain things in a logical sense, just like you are right now, to where it flips a switch to where they understand it? I mean, you would think making sure the grocery stores are stocked would be a top priority for literally anybody who enters in the political realm that affects such things.
Mm-hmm.
But for whatever reason, it's just not. And
Right.
it's just like there's blinders. It's just like national
right.
debt. There's blinders, like just keep spend.
Yeah,
Nothing's ever going to happen. It just doesn't make sense to anyone who's a logical thinker.
Yeah. Well, now they don't even talk about the national debt because they just continue to add trillions of dollars to the national debt. You try to build relationships with those legislators to where, they will, when they ask you questions, that they can trust you when you give them an answer, and you're just not giving them a political answer just to try to sway them your way. You try to lay it out to them that this is the reason why agriculture is the number one industry. Yes, Tennessee has done great in regards to manufacturing, but agriculture is still our largest industry in the state of Tennessee. So we want those individual senators and other legislators to understand that if you pass this type of legislation, that it would be harmful to our number one industry in our state.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And do you get, responses, or do you generally get pushed back to those things and it kind of spirals out of control?
No, I think most of the time they're very receptive. They're very open-minded. When you have those conversations, for example, there's always environmental issues that come up, and so on the surface it sounds like it's a good idea, but at the end of the day, it's going to affect farmers in a negative way. And so you try to say, look, I understand why you think that's a good environmental policy, but let me tell you and show you where other states have done this and how it's basically caused farmers to go out of business.
Sure.
It's severely impacted the amount of product that they're able to grow and to produce, which has ultimately caused them financial hardship.
Right.
So,
and the farmers, like the place where I'm from, they're now doing with the ranchers, which is Colorado. And they're trying to pass legislature that's going to more or less eliminate beef production from the state of Colorado. So it does the same thing in a place like that where, just like what you're talking about in Tennessee with the farming. And it's really interesting. It's just nothing about politics on a state level or certainly the federal level makes a whole lot of sense to anybody who's a critical thinker. It just doesn't. Everything's backwards. And you've been in it long enough. I'm sure you figured out ways how to get around that. But
well, when I went into the legislature, a good friend of mine today, who's a state senator, who is a big farmer, he said, number one, don't, whatever you do, don't ever lie to your colleagues, don't ever lie to your lobbyist, because lobbyists are just there. Lobbyists get a bad name. I'll just say this about lobbyists a lot of times. Lobbyists are there. They have been hired by someone to lobby on behalf of certain legislation. It's amazing that, you've got a lobbyist that'll come in today to my office today, and they're lobbying on a bill that, that's absolutely good policy for the state of Tennessee. They come back in tomorrow, they're lobbying on a bill that's one of the worst things in the world that we could do for the state of Tennessee and or individuals. So you basically get information from lobbyists. They provide some of the best information that you can get regarding bills, because we have over 1,600 bills filed every year, and it's virtually impossible to learn something about every piece of legislation. So lobbyists come in, but so anyone can hire a lobbyist as far as bringing someone in to promote that has a relationship with legislators. But again, that's whenever I was talking about my friend, he basically said, just don't ever lie to your colleagues and don't ever lie to lobbyists, because the only thing lobbyists are doing is counting votes.
Yeah.
They're trying to persuade you, and they're just counting votes. And that is something that I have absolutely lived by as far as being in the legislature. But I've got colleagues that, they'll tell you one thing today and do the exact opposite tomorrow. And it's disheartening. They're still my friends, but at the same time, you just say, I can't count on Joe. If he says that he's with me, it doesn't mean that he's with me.
Plan that he's not next Tuesday.
Exactly. Yeah. And so
and I don't think a lot of average Americans really even understand what a lobbyist is.
Right.
I think it would be really instrumental for someone to really define that, because I think people just think lobbyists and they think big bad, control everything that's going on the federal and state level. And probably just the federal level. I don't think enough people pay attention to what's going on in the state level. I know I'm or have been, one of these people who, if I see an R when I'm going and doing the voting, because I feel like I got to do my part to vote on the local authority, but most people don't look at the, who they're even voting for on a state level.
One of the most powerful legislative bodies, city council and your county commission.
Especially if you have to work with them on anything. I've spent endless hours working with my local city council to be able to just do simple things like open your doors.
Right.
I don't want those bushes, but you don't have a choice.
Exactly. So to my point, some of your local government, your local city council, your local county commission, they're closest to the people, and laws that they pass can have far-reaching effects on business, on residential developments.
It's unbelievable how powerful a city council is.
Yes, absolutely.
And one jackass on city council can sway everything over and over. I've sat in on so many, proceedings for city council, and it's funny because you always get and I'm sure you've done the same, but you always get the same people in there. Okay, before you start, they have the proceeding, and any new business, people can just jump up, and by God, you're gonna have the same people in there arguing. Doesn't matter what it is, whatever side of the fence they're on, they're gonna argue that fence needs to be blue,
right,
no matter what you do, or red, or whatever. And a couple members on a city council can make a decision that affects every single new business who tries to enter that, whether that be a Fortune 500 company or a boutique.
Right.
And let's say they put in some change, like you need a giant screening wall. They don't care that it's $250,000 to put that screening wall up, and they don't care if that's your entire year's revenue. By God, if you want to be here, you're going to get that screening wall up.
You're going to get that screening. Exactly. And that's the reason I say that
Yep.
Sometimes your most powerful government is your closest government, which is your city council and your county commission. So
get involved in that if you're wanting to do anything. So you've been in politics for a long time. You're a successful business person. What did you use from those things, like when you started working with the AQHA?
So most recently, I've been on the AQHA board of directors for 16 years now, and of course been involved with AQHA for 30 years. But most recently, I have really been involved with the National Reined Cow Horse Association.
Yeah, you're chairman, correct?
I currently serve as the vice president, and the vice president of the NRCHA basically is responsible, of according to our bylaws, is responsible for the day-to-day operations of the association, which now we have an executive director and we have an office staff. But, you know, I became a board member in like 2008, and it is unbelievable the growth that the NRCHA has seen over the past several years.
It's some of the largest growth in the entire Western industry based on numbers.
A good friend of mine, Miss Patty Colbert, has said that the cow horse industry is the sexiest Western horse industry, Western horse discipline going right now. And so, yes, we have seen a huge amount of growth. A lot of that is due to the fact that we've moved 2 of our major events to Fort Worth. We've moved it to a cow town, and so we've got the World Show, World's Greatest Horseman in February, and then now we've got the Snaffle Bit Futurity in October here. We're about to go to Scottsdale, Arizona next week.
That's a great place to do it.
Westworld is a great place. We were at South Point in March with our stakes, and then we've recently added, this will be the 2nd year, we needed a major event, a premier event in the East, and so we're having a show in July in Memphis. It's at the Shelby Show Place, because our membership is now growing, and we're not just a east or west of the Mississippi organization. We're now a national organization and got a lot of people that are on the eastern side of the United States. It's real hungry for the cow horse, and so it was time for us to have a premier event there in the East, where those people could come and be a part of a major cow horse event. But you know, we have just seen our purses grow, our entry numbers. We're up 20% at our Derby in Scottsdale as far as numbers from last year, and we were in a pandemic year, and we saw our shows grow last year even during a pandemic. This year we're experiencing 20% growth again at all of our shows. So it has just been unbelievable. You know, but when I became a board member in 2008, there was a lot of mindsets that had to be changed, and it was not an overnight change.
The good old boys, right?
And let me tell you, they're great. Those people that served on the served the NRCHA, they were great people, great horsemen and horsewomen. They were absolutely fabulous, but you know, we needed some new ideas, some fresh ideas, and so it took basically bringing in some new board members, doing some restructuring of our bylaws to where we were able to stagger the board members being elected, because you know, every year we were electing half of our board members, and that wasn't a good program, because I mean, you were serving a 2-year term, and to really understand the operation of the association, you needed to be there on that board at least 3 years just to grasp what's taking place and the changes that needed to take place. So we just started out and brought in people that had new ideas and fresh ideas, and we hired an executive director that just really brought in some good office staff people and people that understood the cow horse industry, and just really allowed us to take off and start growing. Yeah.
Well, I mean, and other organizations and other Western disciplines are copying you guys' models a little bit.
Well, and you know, the best form of flattery is imitation. You
Absolutely.
know, and copying. So, and hey, that's great. And so, you know, one thing that I say is that we've got to make sure we maintain that momentum. We've got to continue the upward push of wanting people to come and be inclusive in our shows, try to create classes to where new people that want to come and show a cow horse, that they have an entry-level position for them to be able to be at, whether it's on the non-professional side or it's on the professional side. We want to make sure that you feel like that you can compete on a level that you can win at.
Yeah. Well, I mean, inclusivity is the key to growth in all things. So.
And I think, years ago, and I think it's just wasn't exclusive to the cow horse industry. I think all of your whether it be your reiners or your cutters or AQHA, everyone always just focused on the professionals. And yes, you had some amateur classes, or yes, you had some non-professional, but everything was always heavily weighted to the professional side of it, to the open side. And that was kind of a mindset that I felt like that we ultimately changed with the NRCHA. Yes, everyone wants to see a Boyd Rice come and compete and show and try to win the snaffle bit futurity or try to win the world's greatest horseman. People want to see a Corey Cushion come and show and compete. People want to see Robert Chown come and compete and bring his non-pros and that can compete on a top level. But what we really focused on is that to be able, a rising tide does what? It lifts all boats, right?
It does.
So when you bring in this new blood by creating these non-professional classes, these non-pro classes at entry level where those people come in, guess what? They have expendable cash. That's the reason they're showing horses.
Absolutely.
They've been successful business people. So they are there. They're wanting to be involved. And guess what? They're going to that Robert Chown, or they're going to that Corey Cushion, or they're going to, Sarah Dawson and Chris Dawson, and they're basically saying, hey, I'm enjoying this so much. Do you think if I bought you a 3-year-old for the futurity next year, is that something you think that you'd be interested in doing? So those non-pros, they're showing at a level that they can, and then now they're coming to the professional and saying, hey, I want to buy you a 3-year-old to compete in the futurity, and then with the hopes that this will be my horse in about 3 to 4 years. So again, that tide lifted all boats.
Well, that's cowboy economics right there.
Yeah, but it's hard. Many times people I think they get blinders on and they can't see that. So it's kind of like, okay, well, if we pay the winner of the snaffle bit futurity, if we pay the winner $200,000, then that means we're going to get 50 more entries. No, it doesn't. I tell you what really makes the difference in your futurities and things like that. Sure, you can pay that winner $100,000. You can pay that winner $125,000. But if you bring 25 finalists to the finals of the futurity, if you guarantee that at least 25th place gets a check for $10,000, that's what drives entries into your association, because they know that they're going to get a check for at least $10,000. Now, that's a drop in the bucket to what someone has spent getting that horse to the futurity.
It's just the idea of recompensation, though.
Exactly. But when you go from years that someone wasn't getting but maybe $1,800 or $2,000 to be 25th place in a futurity class, and now you're saying we're guaranteeing you that you're going to get a $10,000 check, whether you're 25th place or you're going to get a $125,000 check if you're first place. It really, that also made a big difference because people started buying horses. Based on our numbers right now, our preliminary numbers for our snaffle bit futurity, coming up in October, we're like 40 to 50 horses above what we were last year.
Right.
And so but it goes back, and because Robert Chown is the professional that's worked with myself and my wife and my children for a number of years. Just recently he had a non-pro limited rider, which is just a boxing rider, buy him a 2-year-old last year for a 3-year-old prospect. She enjoyed it so much that she wanted to buy him a horse for him to be able to show, with the hopes that horse would be hers in a few years. So again, you just allow that tide to lift all those boats.
I mean, it makes a ton of sense when you're trying to grow something, as an organization, and also kind of the culture surrounding that organization. I mean, yeah, it makes all the sense in the world. Why is it rocket science for some people is the $1 million question.
You've probably got my wheels turning more about this than politics. But and let me say this. Here's the other thing in regards to the mindset that many have had in the past, and that mindset is this. They want a big audience to see the finals, and your sponsors want people to buy
because they want the exposure.
They want the exposure, and they want people to buy their products. Well, what happens whenever you create these entry-level positions? You automatically are creating an audience because those people are there, they're dedicated, they have the time to be there, so they're basically at the event from start to finish, and their butts are sitting in those seats watching those professionals show and cheering those guys on. What are they also doing? They're buying saddles. They're buying leg gear. They're buying horse pads. They're buying cowboy hats. All the products that are in those trade shows, those individuals are going in there and buying. And I can tell you, speaking from experience from my wife, they're not just buying it at one show. They're buying that type of product at every show.
Yes, they are.
And so, and the professionals, they always wanted butts in the seats. And of course, many are endorsed by these different products. And because of those endorsements, they're wanting people to go buy that because, Russell Dilday is wearing that patch on his shirt. But I can tell you that it's those non-pros that are going to buy that product, and especially those non-pros that are entering the industry. So we always have to make sure that we make those people feel welcome and encourage them to be a part of our association.
Absolutely. I really like your mindset. I don't think you get much sleep between the politics, the Western sports, all the politics involved in that, and then, of course, running businesses. I don't know when you sleep or have time for anything.
Well, I talk about time silos, so I basically put things in 3 time silos. I put a time silo for my business, for politics, and then for the horse world and the associations that I'm a part of. But I just can't tell you how excited that I have been with the growth of the cow horse in the last several years. It has just been phenomenal. And you know what? I showed reiners for a number of years, and of course I grew up showing in the AQHA. And I hope that I hear this all the time from people that are a part of the cow horse world now, is that I went into the herd to cut, and Boyd Rice is over there turning back for me, and Boyd come and told me that you need to do this, you need to do that, or someone else come and said, hey, if you'll do this in the reining. I hope we never lose that in the cow horse. I hope that we always are inviting and that we're willing to help anyone and everyone that wants to be a part of our association.
That's what's so great about let's call them maybe equine celebrities. They're so accessible. We talk about that all the time. Same thing in the rodeo world.
Right.
You could have a Jess Lockwood pulling your bull rope and it's your first PBR ever, or your first, whatever. Or you could have someone, Trevor Brazil, pushing your calf. Trevor's not pushing anybody's calf anymore, but you get the point. Yeah. These people are accessible and right there for you at all these events, and it's just such a unique factor that we have that no one else has. And
something else, what's awesome, Sarah Dawson won the National Reined Cow Horse Association Snaffle Bit Futurity this year. Mm-hmm. So she's competing against top professional men riders, and yet she went in there and she kicked their butt this year. Erin Tormino, another lady that has been kicking men's butt over the last few years in showing. But there were women that paved the way. Lynn Anderson from California, she helped pave the way for women in the cow horse industry. Sandy Collier helped to pave the way many years ago when it was tough for a woman to compete in that type of a Western discipline. Those two women, just to name two, and there's more, right. Joanne Corello, I could just continue to go on and on, naming women that have helped to pave the way for Sarah Dawson. And something that I'd like to say too, when the NRCHA went on the hunt for a new executive director, we ultimately hired a lady by the name of Anna Morrison to come and run the National Reined Cow Horse Association. She is, as far as I know, the first lady, the first female to run a National Equine Association. So I'm just pointing that out. I just think that we guys sometimes think it's all about us, but a lot of times the women, they are.
Well, they're certainly smarter than us.
I'll agree with you on that one.
Well, Paul, you're a pretty unique individual, and I really enjoyed this. Between the politics and the early economical discussions all the way down to, all the fascinating aspects of the cow horse stuff. It really is intriguing.
I'm sure Mr. Producer over here is going to have a lot of editing to do, but
I don't think so. He's just going to have to switch between your face and my face, and your face and my face. As far as the conversation goes, I think he'll admit it was pretty intriguing stuff.
Mr. Producer, did we miss anything that you would like to hear about? What's something that's I'm sure you did some background research, didn't you?
He wants to go back to critical race theory.
Oh, I actually want to go back to constitutional carry, but I was like, I couldn't find a stopping point that I could interject.
All right, so this is what's going to happen. You talk about that before I pee my pants, and I'll be right back.
All right, you go do that. And we're going to keep that. I'm not going to edit that out in any way.
This is literally the first time that Ty has been able to speak to somebody without me in the room.
So I do have a question on constitutional carry, because Texas is just now passed, as they're talking background, but Texas just passed the same law. Why did you guys see it as necessary that people could carry without any sort of prior experience or any sort of training, to say, not limiting, but just in terms of having people that were trained to carry?
Right. So, and that was part of the debate. How do you allow someone that has never had any training to carry a firearm? But in reality, what we have seen is that most people are responsible whenever it comes to handling a firearm. Do I think that they should have some form of training? The answer is yes. But at the same time, I don't think that we should limit their rights to be able to carry, although I feel like that they should have some form of formal training of being able to handle a firearm. So that was all part of the debate, but at the end of the day, we looked at it as it was a constitutional right for someone to be able to carry that firearm. We also believe that the majority of the people are responsible and that they would be responsible gun owners. We also put in our legislation that if you are not a responsible person and you are a lawbreaker, in other words, if you get caught stealing a firearm, if you basically you're convicted of DUI 2 times, if you're convicted of stalking, then the penalties are severe to where it would deter people from wanting to break those laws. And so we just felt like that people have individual responsibilities and that they can make good choices. The other thing, and I'm assuming Texas is the same way, we have what we call the Castle Doctrine, which meant that someone could keep a firearm in their car, in their boat, in their home, in their motor home, any type of personal property. So you could be driving up and down the interstate, even though you didn't have a carry permit prior to this legislation. You could still have a firearm on you. You just couldn't get out of your vehicle and carry that with you if you went into a place of business or an individual's home. The other part about our legislation is this. If a business posts that they do not allow firearms to be carried in their business, then you have to honor that. That is that business's choice. If someone basically says that you can't carry a firearm on their personal property, then you are to respect that individual's request for you not to carry that firearm. And
I did see in that, and I was actually really surprised that, at least in Tennessee, that stealing a firearm was a misdemeanor before this bill, which it upgraded to a felony. But we do have the castle doctrine in Texas. It's very, again, these are pretty similar states,
right?
And I understand that people could still carry without needing a permit with that, but why? And you said it yourself, that you think that people should have training in some sort of way, but why would you allow a bill to pass that does not allow for that? Especially because, say, I can carry a firearm, but I have literally no training. I've held a fire. The first time I held a pistol was when I was like 10, and I haven't held one since. But
so let me ask you this question: If Texas had the same law, and I haven't been able to keep up if Texas has passed,
it passed, I believe, today.
Okay. So this legislation, does that, knowing that you can do that, do you want to go out and do that?
No, I'm not going to go do that. But also, I'm also not everyone else, and everyone does not think that in the same way either.
I know, but there's more people that think logically like you than we give people credit for. And because you know that you can, but yet you're not comfortable carrying that firearm, you're not going to do so unless you go and take a firearm class. Now, also with these constitutional carries, if allowing for constitutional carry, if you want to have reciprocity with another state, then you have to have the permit, which requires the 8 hours of training to be able to do so. So you can carry inside the state of Tennessee. I'm assuming Texas is going to be similar. You can carry inside the state of Texas, which is nearly a nation within itself, right? But if you wanted to go to Oklahoma, or if you wanted to go to New Mexico, or if you wanted to go to Louisiana, then you would still have to have that permit. But I understand your argument, but I point back and say, you're a logical person. And you just said, no, I don't really feel comfortable. But at the same time, those of us that have grown up with firearms and grown up with guns and hunting and know how to handle them, we shouldn't, as a legislative body, keep those individuals from being able to exercise their constitutional right.
And just so everyone knows, I'm not against people carrying. I was just my thing I would be comfortable with is if people had training before they were allowed to carry into a public place. That was just my argument.
Oh, and you know what? I love the debate that you and I have had on that. And so, again, I always point back that government tries to limit. Today's government tries to limit people's personal rights. And so anytime that, for me, a state legislature can continue to give back personal rights that have been taken away from them in years past by the legislatures, I'm always happy to do that. And quite honestly, we had heard rumblings about what the federal government was wanting to do regarding firearms and trying to put a lot more restrictions on firearms. And so we were trying to be proactive. A lot of times government is not proactive, and we're being reactive. And so we were just trying to be proactive. And again, it's legislation that's come up year after year after year in regards to being able to have what we call constitutional carry. And so we've chipped away at our permitting process to where we finally got it to say, okay, we'll pass constitutional carry. And plus we had a governor that was willing to do it. The previous governor, although he was Republican, he wasn't for constitutional carry. The current governor ran on constitutional carry. That was part of his platform, is that he wanted to pass constitutional carry.
All right. Well, that's all I have on that discussion.
Well, so what else?
I think that was really the only thing that I want to come back to, really.
Okay.
Now I'm gonna have to eat our own dog food here, and I'm gonna have to go back and listen to hear what you said while I was using the bathroom. Quite intrigued.
Yeah. No. So
Paul didn't storm out of here, so that's better than most guests who talk to you alone.
People usually like me.
No, so
yes, they do. I'm just messing with you.
You'll probably want to edit this out, but so usually what we do at our during my podcast, like at the end, I usually go like time. We cut the recording, and then I'll say, I always ask the guest, is there anything we didn't cover, and a lot of times if it's let's just say a commissioner of a specific department, or if it's a prominent leader in the party, they always have someone with them, and and it's usually their press person. I always say, is there anything you want their message to get out? But anyways, that's the reason I really turned to you to just say, hey, is there anything we've missed on this?
Yeah, I've done like 1 or 2 PR classes. PR is a whole different thing in terms of, especially I've had to deal with PR in terms of because I've interviewed basketball players. PR is they're very keen on what they want, what the message is, the company that they want out.
Right.
Yeah, we usually make Riley wrestle out managers and PR directors. They're not allowed through the front door. We're too much of a free-form podcast for that.
Well, and that's probably the reason you're successful with your podcast, because you're not trying to suppress. No agendas. I mean, you speak freely, and so, it's just like in, Texas and Tennessee. I tell people all the time there wouldn't be a Texas if it wasn't for Tennessee. So a couple of years ago, I had to come down to the Texas Senate to testify on behalf of some legislation that was passing. And, as I walked through security and into the main hallway of the Texas State Capitol, I was greeted by a great Tennessean, being Davy Crockett. And so I felt really at home. And in fact, I made that comment whenever I testified before the Texas Senate.
Got some laughs, I'm sure.
I did. I said, there wouldn't be a Texas if it wasn't for Tennessee. And so I felt really at home today when I walked in, and I saw a fellow Tennessean standing, towering over. And of course, Sam Houston also had a lot of Tennessee roots. So, I mean, again, that's what we love to say, is that there wouldn't be a Texas if it wasn't for Tennessee.
Well, the two are pretty synergistic. I mean, your Tennessee music scene and your Texas music scene kind of do this now. So, yeah. States of the same feather flock together.
I'm surprised you said that without stumbling.
Why is that? Am I the one who fumbles with my words, or is that you?
Both of us do it.
Yeah, not me. I don't know how to talk.
Riley, is there anything that you...
No, I think you covered it.
I think it was an excellent podcast.
Well, I hope so.
And highly informative, which is what I was hoping to get out of you. So,
well, thank you.
Appreciate you stopping by.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, sir. Thank you. This has been The Gauge, hosted by me, Chance Conrado, produced and edited by our guy, Ty Yeager. Shout out to the executive producers, Dustin Pointer and Cody Denton. Marketing and content produced by Riley Chone. Our theme song is by Shay Ashshire and the Night Howlers. Make sure to rate and review this podcast, as well as follow The Gauge on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And make sure to subscribe to The Gauge wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you guys next time.